Hello, everyone. I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to this week's episode of That Conspiracy Chick podcast. Today, we are talking mysteries in the Vatican archives. Let's get into it. Guys, I'm definitely on some kind of secret Illuminati watch list after doing research for this episode. Actually, you know what? I'm probably been on some kind of Illuminati watch list or FBI list after my years of being a conspiracy theorist and history lover and Googling the weirdest things. Like, I probably have my own personal FBI agent, but he's the most bored FBI agent you can possibly ever think of because my life is really not that interesting and I just Google stuff more than I actually do things. Speaking of which, did you guys know you can go to the FBI's website and read classified files? I know a lot of people knew that, especially if you're listening to this podcast and you're interested in stuff like this, that they have released, put that in quotation marks, classified documents. A lot of stuff is blacked out. So if you go to the website and like look up JFK files, you'll see a lot of stuff you can read, and it's a very, very interesting read, but there's some things that are blacked out on it. And of course, I'm sure they have altered it very much altered a lot of those files. But it's a fascinating read if you guys want to kill a couple nights and to read something before bed. That's what I did. So I started reading them. So before bed, I'd just go and like click on a file. But it's crazy how many files they kept on people, like politicians, movie stars, and just regular people. There was a lot of names that I seemingly were just regular people, but I know there was a lot of paranoia about people being communist and things like that back then. So I was curious and looked up if they had a file on me. But like I said, I guess I'm not that interesting for them to keep a file on, especially in the days of limited technology. So back then, there was no internet, really no surveillance cameras or anything like that, especially in these small towns and things like that people were living in. So they had to do their surveillance just by walking around and tapping people's phone lines and just in secondhand accounts. So they would like interview people about other people. So, hey, what did you see on this, and this date? And then had to go back and type out. Again, there was no internet. There was no Word or spreadsheets or Excel spreadsheets or anything like that. So they had to literally use their typewriter and go back and type out the detailed accounts that they had. And even before the days of tape recorders. So I know for a while there were tape recorders that they can go around and interview people and sort of like as they're following someone around, just tape record what they're seeing the person do. But back before those days, before we even had tape recorders, they had to go back and get these detailed accounts of what happened. Made me think about like how terrible of an agent I would be, because I can't remember jack shit. Like, it's scrambled eggs upstairs sometimes where somebody will tell me something and I'm like, I have no idea. I'm just looking at them like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I do not remember that. And I'm terrible with names. I'm terrible with names of places. So a terrible agent. But yeah, definitely go check that out. No matter how much they are altered, it is interesting to read. If you're into true crime, they have pretty much every serial killer you can think of. They have detailed FBI files on those people. Of course, like, that's a no-brainer. I would expect you would be on the FBI radar if you are considered a serial killer. But it's interesting to go read the detailed accounts. But I might get into that as I read more files. And when I have the time, I haven't actually been able to read it here recently. But when I read more files, I'll definitely fill you guys in on what I found. So there's two segments I like to do on this podcast before we get into our main topic. And the first one is called History News. Before I get into the main history news, I'm sure you guys have heard about the Chinese air balloon that's going around social media right now. Not really a conspiracy there. Everyone everywhere is spying on each other. I'm sure China's spying on Korea, and China's spying on us, and Russia's spying on China, and Russia's spying on, like, it's just kind of primitive, right, to think that they would be doing it via air balloon, you know? If it was really something that they were doing, why would they do it so blatantly out in the open via air balloon? That's odd to me. But as I was researching this for the podcast, I read that China actually is now saying they have shot down lots of US air balloons over China that's been spying on them. And while, yes, I'm not doubting this at all, like, again, everyone everywhere is spying on the other, it's just comical to me that you have actual diplomats and world leaders doing the, but mom, he did it first game. It's so funny. What? That's why I said it's so weird how, like, blatant and out in the open it is. Either China and the US just doesn't give a fuck and they're just like, yeah, we're spying on you, whatever, which could be the case. Or there's just really nothing there. It was something else that they're shooting down. It could have been just nothing, or some kind of technology that sort of drifted away. Like, I don't know, but it's just, isn't that wild that they're just like playing that tit for tat game of who did it first? And, well, we've shot down balloons from you guys before. And it's like, what are you guys doing? What are you... I'm not really as into this story as I probably should be, honestly, but because to me there's just no conspiracy here unless we get some new information that comes out in the next possible days. I won't be updating you guys on this subject matter, but if there's something new that comes out that sort of makes it a little bit more interesting and a little bit on the lines of on my radar now, then I'll update you guys about it. But I'm not as into this story as I should be. Like, everyone's spying on each other. That's why we don't have experimental government labs out in the open, like in the middle of a city. They're underground in remote places that no one knows about. So, yeah, it just doesn't really make sense. What are they spying on? Just regular everyday people? They're trying to intercept radio signals or something like that. Like, I don't know. I'm not into this as I should be. But I know there's a lot of people that are. So if you guys want me to report more about this, definitely let me know at That Conspiracy Chick Pod across social media platforms. But I'm just, it's not that important to me. Let's get into our main topic of history news. So, from the website Live Science, archaeologists discover a cemetery in Italy that has the remains of children whose bodies were pinned down with rocks, likely to prevent revenants rising from the dead. Just raise your hands really quick if this makes you as happy as it makes me. People of the past letting their freak flags fly. I love it. I'm going to tell my family actually to bury me like this, so when they dig me up millions of years from now, they'll be trying to figure out the mystery surrounding like who I was as a person and my death and my burial. Like, ooh, she was this person, or she was this, like, nope, just some weird chick who told her family to do this, some weird chick who's super into zombies and told her family to do this. And what if, just hear me out, what if that very thing happened and they just buried the kids like this to fuck with us because they knew, oh, people are gonna dig us up, people are gonna dig these kids up millions of years now. How metal would that be? I love it. Anyway, sorry. Anyway, back to history news. The cemetery is located in the ruins of a Roman villa at the archaeological site in central Italy that dates to the 5th century AD, a time when the Western Roman Empire was collapsing. By this time, many people of the Roman Empire had converted to Christianity. Excavations at the site started in the 1980s and continue today. But then archaeologists have unearthed a large number of dog remains, many of them from puppies. Dog burials from this period are often associated with children as tomb protectors, and puppies would have been an especially lively and fresh sacrifice, with perhaps more potency for remedy for the community. Some of the children were buried in unusual ways. One of the children, for instance, had a piece of mortar in their mouth, and others seemed to have been buried with their limbs weighed down with stones. There was tremendous fear of revenants and mysterious forces such as witches who might harness the spirits of the dead for their own devices. Fear of the undead was common among both Christians and non-Christians from that period. Analysis of the human remains indicate that many of them were suffering from malaria. This outbreak may have also influenced people to bury children this way. Stones in the mouth or over the body to weigh it down were seen as apotropaics, or having the power to avert evil, to protect the as yet unaffected communities. Around this time, there was a sense of constant struggle with the supernatural, and it is not surprising to see such things in a cemetery where people were facing a severe outbreak of malaria. An important aspect of this site was how carefully excavated. This meticulousness allows for a detailed reconstruction of the ritual that were performed on the deceased. Around this time, there was a sense of constant struggle with the supernatural, as it is not surprising to see such things in a cemetery where people were facing a severe outbreak of malaria. I was thinking about adding a segment of this podcast called Zombie News, because I'm a dork that checks daily if we're closer to a zombie apocalypse, which, by the way, by the look of scientific innovations, probably. But this is interesting to think that people back then thought this way and that this was a real fear of theirs. I mean, it makes sense given how highly religious and superstitious they were, but compared to modern day where we're close to some sort of apocalypse in some kind of way, whether it's environmental or zombie apocalypse or just something. People of those times didn't even see films about zombies or know anything about any kind of supernatural things. So it makes me believe that everything has to come from something, right? So if they believe that witches or somebody could reanimate the dead or create vampires or something along the lines of that, it makes me think that, did they actually see something like that? I mean, I know there's people right now rolling their eyes, but back then there were accounts of many people doing stuff with voodoo or even certain illnesses, making it seem as though there were walking dead. So they would bury people, and then all of a sudden a couple days later you would hear people hitting on the coffin, essentially that they were alive. They thought they were dead, and that's just certain illnesses and things like that. And like I said, even voodoo, there was accounts of people, of witch doctors, and that can actually bring the dead back to life. So, I mean, the thought had to come from somewhere, right? And just to be enough to make them want to bury their dead in that way, especially in a highly religious society where burial was important. Even to Christians, like Christians traditionally don't think about stuff like this, especially back then. So yeah, what do you guys think about this? Do you think that people were just paranoid back then, or did this stem from somewhere? Let me know on YouTube or on social media at That Conspiracy Chick Pod. You can also go down in the show notes and get a link to our social media pages. Alright guys, so let's get into our next segment. Let's get into some apocalypse news, guys. So, do you know what's actually trending right now? Can cordyceps infect humans? Based off the hit show The Last of Us, which is fantastic, by the way. It's like The Walking Dead's first 2 seasons when it was actually good, but with fast-moving zombies and better effects. Anyway, I guess now everyone's scared of the possibility because in order for this to happen, humans and the environment have to become warmer. So it's funny, me and my friend was watching The Last of Us, and he was actually really scared that this could happen. So he Googled it, and we found out it was actually trending. But again, in order for it to properly infect the host, we would have to be a lot warmer. But now I guess people are correlating global warming with the fact that this could be happening. So as the world gets hotter, we by default get hotter, and they say it's a possibility that this could happen. Well, when I say they, I mean everyday people. Scientists keep saying no, there's no way that cordyceps can infect our brain and cause us to become brain dead. Honestly, in my opinion, if this was to happen, it would be many, 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 many years from now. The world would have to significantly and consistently maintain a certain temperature. Of course, I'm not an expert at this type of thing. Cordyceps don't adapt like viruses can, and I think right now temperatures are too unstable for them to survive. And also the chances of them being like ravenous zombies like we see in the show are slim. It'll probably be something more like if it infects the brain, it makes you more brain dead and go into a coma. But again, I'm not an expert at this, but just in my thoughts, it would be almost near to impossible for this to have happened in the way that it does in the show. Now again, we'll be more like brain dead zombies, like in almost a comatose like state than anything. What do you guys think about that? Yeah, I don't know why this is trending so much, because we've had so many shows about apocalypses, but I guess maybe the fact that it has to do with nature, that people are thinking that this could be a possibility. But in my opinion, like I said, like the scientists are saying, there is just no way this can actually physically happen unless the world itself became hotter and became hotter consistently. But even then, so think about this. So us humans and animals were made to evolve to adapt to a certain environment, right? So over time, through evolution and things like that, we transform into different things. So wouldn't you think that, let's say, if the world became hotter over time, humans would be born with the ability to cool down faster? And of course, it will take, evolution is over years, sometimes millions of years, sometimes even a shorter period, like hundreds of years. But over time, we will be born with the ability to cool down because the world is hotter now. And so because if the world was hot and then we were hot, our bodies can't go up to a certain temperature. Just a thought, just a little thought. Let me know what you guys think about this. I'm genuinely curious about your opinions on this, because of course, let's say if this were to magically happen, right? Of course, at least that would happen over a certain period of time. But I feel like the humans that survived and are reproducing would adapt. So their bodies would cool down over time, thus making the cordyceps not be able to use them as a host anymore. And so would animals and things like that, because that's just how human beings and animals do. We respond to changes in the environment by adapting. Let me know what you guys think. I digress. Alright guys, let's get into mysterious items in the Vatican archives. Now I will preference this pod by saying allegedly. I don't want to be on more lists than I already am. I don't want to be on the Vatican list that I'm already on the Illuminati list and the FBI list. So I'm just going to say allegedly. So we all know that the Vatican is an independent city-state within Rome, Italy. It became independent from Italy in 1929 with the Lateran Treaty, and is a distinct territory under full ownership and sovereign authority and jurisdiction of the All-Seeing Holy See, SEE, not SEA. Itself a sovereign entity of international law, which maintains the city-state's temporal, diplomatic, and spiritual independence. With an area of 121 acres and a 2019 population of about 453, it is the smallest state in the world, both by area and population. It has 53 miles of shelving, 35,000 volumes of catalog. Part of that is the largest collection of porn in the world. 12 centuries worth of documents housed in one of the most iconic bastions of religion and culture. The Vatican's secret archives are the stuff of historical legend, but their existence is absolutely factual. The secretive nature of the Catholic Church and the potential trove within have fueled years of wild speculation about what's actually inside. Even today, conspiracy theories abound over its content. But until 1881, not even scholars of Christianity were permitted to have access to the archive. That's when Pope Leo XIII, known as an intellectual who confronted the modernization of the late 19th century, opened the archive to researchers. These fascinating documents tell not just the story of the church, but also the world as we know it. The one standout item is a letter from Mary, Queen of Scots, who was executed after being forced to abdicate her throne and serving nearly 20 years in confinement. She was finally sentenced to death for conspiring to murder Queen Elizabeth I, her Protestant cousin. Facing beheading, she wrote a desperate letter to Pope Sixtus V begging for her life. The Pope did not intervene, and she was beheaded on February 8, 1587. Just imagine, really quick, you're facing your death by beheading, and you're desperately trying to stop that. It doesn't work, but it doesn't work. The amount of nerves, if I would even call it nerves, but the amount of hopelessness and fear you might feel knowing you're about to die, I couldn't even imagine that. But at least, like, these days we have prison for that type of stuff. But God, I couldn't even imagine, like, the desperation she might have felt around that time. Anyway, these and other historical documents are stored near the Vatican Library in Rome. There are stacks in reading rooms. There is also a bunker, a fireproof underground structure designed to protect fragile documents from the elements and fire. Not everyone can access the archive. It's only open to scholars who undergo a thorough vetting process. I guess they're open like the FBI files are open. You have to jump through hoops to get to it, but even certain documents to those people are off limits. There are several theories about the contents of the Vatican archives. Some theories claim that they contain secret information about the secret organization, the Priory of Sion, proof that Jesus had a wife and descendants, the real Spear of Destiny, secret information about the Holy Grail, and many other secrets. Let's dive into some of those rumored, alleged secrets. Unsurprisingly, the Vatican has been rumored to have all sorts of religious artifacts. After all, like I said at the beginning, it is the biggest bastion of Christianity in the world. And as one of the oldest still existing institutions in the world, it should come as no surprise that the Vatican has been rumored to have all sorts of artifacts with religious value. From the cross that Jesus died on, to the Holy Grail, to the Ark of the Covenant, to Noah's Ark. Pretty much every single major Christian artifact has been rumored to be stored somewhere within the Vatican Secret Archive. Allegedly, somewhere deep within the Vatican Secret Archive, there is evidence of either Jesus' existence or the lack thereof. Supposedly, there's a recorded conversation between Emperor Nero of Rome and St. Paul the disciple, transcribed in some form. If this is true, then depending on the conversation's contents, it could theoretically either undeniably confirm the existence of Jesus as a historical person or disprove his entire existence and establish him as being entirely fictional, either of which could rewrite history as we know it. Described by Father Francois Brune in his 2002 book, The New Mystery of the Vatican, the chronovisor is a device that is rumored to have been created and owned by the Vatican. This device was supposedly built by scientists in the 1950s. The project was allegedly funded by the Vatican for unspecified reasons, but the device is said to work like a pair of glasses. It was theoretically able to view events from the past. I guess my question for them would be, there's not a lot of information about this object, but my question would be for them would to be, where are they getting electromagnetic radiations left over from the past? So is it from artifacts that they get from the past, or are they going to actually these archaeological sites and feeding off the energy from these archaeological sites? Would be a question to ask. Father Brune claimed to have witnessed historical events such as the crucifixion of Christ. Apparently, soon after it was created, it was either dismantled or locked deep within the Vatican walls. In the small Portuguese city of Fatima, 3 young shepherd children supposedly saw numerous visions from the Virgin Mary. In the first secret, the children allegedly saw the fires of hell filled with hideous demons and the suffering souls of the damned. In the second vision, they saw that World War I would end soon, but the Second World War would start almost immediately afterwards if the Pope didn't consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. The third secret, however, was to be kept secret until the year 2000, where it was revealed to supposedly be about the persecution of the Christians in the 20th century and the assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II. However, some people are convinced that the third secret made public was not the same as the one revealed to the children of Fatima. But some people speculate that the third secret is the day of Christ's return, or some even say that it reveals how the world ends. Either way, that secret is locked away in the secure walls of the Vatican. The Grand Grimoire is an alleged medieval book that is believed to possess immense powers. It was written in the 16th century by Honorius of Thebes, who claimed to be possessed by the devil himself. In the book, it has instructions on how to make magic talismans, amulets, how to make magic spells, and even how to summon demons. However, most alarmingly, it even offers instructions on how to summon the devil himself and how to make a deal with him. There have been many copies made after the original was published. However, only the Vatican has the original unaltered copy. Some claim that the others are fake or have been altered. Others claim that all copies have some power, but the original copy owned by the Vatican is the most powerful. Still, according to some, the only real functional copy is held by the Vatican as a way to protect humanity from unimaginable carnage if the book fell into the wrong hands. In my opinion, the only way to know that is if the book was actually used and things got a bit weird in the Vatican. That would actually be a great movie. Somebody ended up summoning the devil and they're trying to keep him locked inside of the Vatican, and they're sort of like going through this battle with the forces of evil within the Vatican walls before it's unleashed into the world. And at the end, the main character sacrifices himself to save mankind. That would be a fantastic film. What do you guys think? Unlike what is taught in Sunday school, Jesus was a Hebrew who lived in the mountainous regions of northern Israel. Therefore, he certainly would have looked more Middle Eastern than what is often portrayed. As a result, the real historical Jesus would have looked nothing like what is portrayed in popular culture, much of which is based off of the handsome face of Cesare Borgia, who was an Italian ex-cardinal and the illegitimate son of Pope Alexander VI. However, some people believe that the Vatican has at least one contemporary depiction of Jesus' appearance. If this is true, not only would this be undeniable evidence of Jesus' existence from only a few years after Jesus' death, but it would also give a rare look into an old historical figure's physical appearance. Either way, that evidence is locked tightly away in the most secured archives in the world. Aliens are almost always the go-to cover-up for many conspiracy theories, and the Vatican is no exception. Some claim that in 1998, skulls with elongated heads and small faces were found underneath the Vatican. Apparently, ever since, the Vatican has kept all evidence of aliens a secret as to not discredit Christianity. Some still believe that the Vatican has much more direct evidence of aliens, with a few even claiming that there are several live aliens tucked away inside of the Vatican's secret archives. That would make for a very interesting X-Files episode. Allegedly, in 1684, the Bible was altered significantly, with the Catholic Church removing 14 books which collided with its doctrine and hid them from public view. Book 1 was 1st Ezra. Book 2 was 2nd Ezra. Then you have Tobit, Judith, the rest of Esther, the Wisdom of Solomon, Ecclesiasticus, also known as Sirach, Baruch, which is the Epistle Jeremiah, the Songs of the Three Holy Children, the History of Susanna, Bel and the Dragon, the Prayer of Manasseh, 1st Maccabees, and 2nd Maccabees. And keeping in line with those alleged removed chapters, an ancient Hebrew apocalyptic religious text ascribed by tradition to Enoch, the great-grandfather of Noah. Enoch contained unique material on the origins of demons, why some angels fell from heaven, an explanation of why the Genesis flood was morally necessary, and the exposition of the 1,000-year reign of the Messiah. 3 books are traditionally attributed to Enoch, including the distinct works 2nd Enoch and 3rd Enoch. So, why do you think the Vatican would have kept those chapters a secret from the public? Would they contain works that discredit the Bible or hinder it in any kind of way? That only the Vatican knows. The Ark of the Covenant is an alleged artifact believed to be the most sacred relic of the Israelites. It is described as a wooden chest covered in pure gold with an elaborately designed lid called the mercy seat. According to the book of Exodus, the ark contained the 2 stone tablets of the 10 Commandments. According to the New Testament book of Hebrews, it also contained Aaron's rod and a pot of manna. Jewish and Christian tradition presents the Ark of the Covenant as the physical manifestation of God's presence and supreme power. Ancient Israelites marched the ark into battle and brought whole cities to their knees. The ark was so sacred that by touching it meant instant death. Once it was laid to rest in the temple of Jerusalem's holiest chamber, only the high priest was allowed in its presence once a year. Then Babylon sacked Jerusalem in 6th century BCE and the ark disappeared. In the thousands of years since, its fate has stymied readers of history, and according to Ethiopian tradition, the Ark of the Covenant is preserved in the ancient holy city of Aksum. For centuries, the great relic was kept in the Church of Mary of Zion, where the great Emperor Ieyasu is recorded as having seen it and spoken to it in 1691. The last time the Ark of the Covenant was supposedly seen was in Jerusalem some 2,600 years ago. Now archaeologists are exploring the ancient town of Kiryat Jearim, where the Bible says the ark was kept for 20 years before being taken to Jerusalem. Some say it was taken to the Vatican by the Nazis during World War II because they were the only ones able to handle the relic. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, I highly doubt. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, even as a conspiracy theorist, I highly doubt. Some people have speculated that the Catholic Church is a demonic institution. Still, some take it a step further and claim that Satan himself is being held within the Vatican's secret archives. The Vatican's most senior exorcist, Father Gabriel Armath, had conducted thousands of exorcisms before his untimely death. He had supposedly spoken to the devil himself at one point within his career. Although the circumstances of this encounter is unknown, Armath claimed that Satan himself was hiding somewhere within the Vatican. The scandals and corruptions within the church in recent times are all attributed to the devil himself, according to Father Gabriel Armath. Why the devil was being kept in the Vatican and for what reasons they choose to keep him a secret, that too is unknown. Last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, the infamous porn collection. Supposedly, the Vatican has 25,000 volumes and some 100,000 prints of erotica, a collection of hush-hush volumes significantly larger than in the private case of the British Museum Library, which estimates to be 20,000 volumes. Even though the Vatican has came out and said that this rumor is false, if true, where did they get so much porn? And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I have enjoyed you, and I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast, rate, review, comment on social media, get into the conversations about what we talked about today. Let me know your thoughts. I'm genuinely curious. Tune in next week where we get into some dead languages and much, much more exciting things to come. Guys, I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you next week. Take care.